Hey there, it's Nick Terzo, and this is the Radical Podcast. No, we won't be overthrowing any governments, but we will be learning from radical creatives who rule the world. Hi, everyone. Welcome to show number 1. We are living in a surreal time, encompassing what is truly an omni-crisis of contagion, economics, and social justice. I know most people feel a little helpless during times like these, but for creative people, I think these type of times allow you to dig a little deeper into yourself, allows you to be a little more soulful, a little bit more clear in your vision, and maybe even a little more radical, so that when we come out of this, we will all be better humans and create better content and music and art and thrive. So part of this aligns with why I decided to launch my own podcast. I wanted to take my 20 to 30 years as a creative executive, a mentor, and a coach to many, many brilliant artists and performers, and reach into my network and have deeper conversations with these people who I respect immensely, and I respect their talent immensely. So my first guest fits this description. His name is Tony Vincent. Tony is a music producer, a songwriter, a performer, and an actor. He has starred in Broadway shows such as Rent, Jesus Christ Superstar, and American Idiot. On the West End, Tony was the lead in the Queen musical We Will Rock You. Tony has worked with various artists, including the band Queen, Green Day, and Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber. He's not only brilliant, remarkable singer, and a lovely human. So I'm very happy to have this conversation with Tony Vincent. Enjoy. Today, I get to welcome my good friend and talented musician, Tony Vincent, for podcast number 1. Tony, I'm really beyond grateful for you taking this shot with me on my very first show.
Oh, it's a privilege. I mean, our history goes deep, so it's an honor to be here.
Yes, same. So, I mean, it's an interesting time. I mean, it's curious now. You're in Tennessee. You left New York City at a very kind of interesting moment based on what's happened
quite
to the
apropos,
city.
Yeah.
And I mean, how do you feel about all that being out of the city? What prompted you kind of to leave New York City and kind of settle here in Tennessee?
Sure. Well, I originally lived here in Nashville when I went to university. So I first came here. I'm a native New Mexican. I moved here in 1991 and got a record deal with EMI while I was here. So that sort of kept me here for about 7 years. It was a central place to tour out of. You could almost go out for 2 or 3 days out of the week and come home, and you could almost use it like the center hub of like a wheel, you know? So it made sense. But when I moved to New York in 97, I was looking for a bit of a more exciting artistic environment. And so that led to a couple different things, whether it was a record deal with Sony or on Broadway. But my choice to leave New York last February, so this is about a year and a half ago, it made sense to me because I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to return to doing music full time, and I wanted to start investing in the talent of tomorrow in a musical theater perspective. So I came back to Nashville and started a company called PCG Theatrical, which essentially is an artist development company that focuses on young people who want to make musical theater part of their life.
Well, that's great. I want to really circle back to that because, I'm a big advocate of mentoring and coaching. So I'm really curious to hear what you're doing in that space. So let's go backwards a little bit. So you got here really for the EMI deal in Nashville, or was it more that you attended Belmont too, right? Didn't you?
I did. That was the total reason that I came here was to study music business and copyright law and publishing and that sort of thing. And although I always knew that I was going to be an artist from I think the age of 5. I heard a Beatles record when I was way young, and I was like, whatever I'm hearing, I have to be a part of. This is too exciting. It's thrilling. It's rock and roll, for lack of a better, term. And I was headed to New York or LA initially, when I was looking at colleges, because that to me was that was music. Music was in LA, New York, or London, and I couldn't figure out how to get to London at that point as a junior in high school, and New York was closer, and New York seemed exciting to me. Um, I was visiting there ever since I was about 12 years old, and so it just felt comfortable in its bizarre state of chaos, and and I thought that would get me to London quicker. Oddly enough, as the longer I lived there, I figured out that there was a much closer tie, musically speaking, to Los Angeles than New York to London, if that makes sense. But but yeah, it was. I heard about this program at Belmont. It was very unconventional at the time. This was way pre Berkeley doing this kind of curriculum, and it was exciting. And I never thought I would ever be in the South. It just didn't. It wasn't on my music radar. I mean, obviously, Music City, USA was, but it was exclusively country music, and that was about as far as I ever, wanted to be. So when you're talking to somebody who's been really English and Britpop influenced, country music doesn't even touch that kind of genre. And so, the South was never on my compass until I heard about this program, and it was amazing. It was amazing because it was unlike anything else that was out there. The faculty was fantastic. It was a really small school at the time. I think there was maybe, gosh, there was under 3,000 kids there living on and off campus. So it was a real intimate kind of situation, and I was able to glean a ton of music knowledge on the academic side of things, on the business side, and I was able to use their studio in the middle of the night as a freshman to do an EP that wound up catching the attention of EMI.
Yeah, it's definitely a world class program. If people listening don't know about Belmont University, it's certainly one of the best.
Yeah, and now, oh my gosh! I mean, I've had a chance to tour the campus, and this is, 24, 27 years later after I attended, and it is epic. It is absolutely spectacular. I think the tuition is probably 5 or 6 times than what I was paying at the time,
It's
but
spectacular too.
but also, yeah, that's spectacular on your, bank statement, yeah. But it's great. I mean, the faculty is still
Yeah,
spectacular.
indeed. So, question kind of coupled with that, because I'm kind of
Yeah.
curious. This kind of goes a little sideways, but as your parents kind of walked you through all this, you're kind of like, man, I'm hungry. I want to go to New York or London. I want to be an
Yeah.
artist. What type of advice or like how supportive were they of you kind of taking like this path of like an artist?
Fortunately, both my grandmothers were musicians. My dad's mom was, like, a big band singer, and my mom's mom was a very heavily influenced, like, I'm gonna use this term in the sense that it was she was very country and western. It was really authentic Patsy Cline, early Johnny Cash, Elvis influenced as a musician. And so, my father also owned an advertising agency when I was growing up, and so I was always around some form of kind of entertainment as a career. Although my grandmothers didn't do it as a career, they still had enough of kind of a music involvement in their life that it seemed somewhat normal to my folks, at least to my father, who was, my biggest support. And when I wanted to get into musicals because I thought that I wanted to be the best possible communicator that I could on stage. So I kind of utilized every outlet that I could, whether it was like a battle of the bands at high school or church choir or whatever that platform was, because at that time I had no filter of like what was cool and what wasn't. It was just like I just want to perform and I don't care what avenue that is. And so um it made sense to kind of experiment in all these different things. And my father was like a big stage mom, and he would take me to rehearsal and take me to band practice. And he helped get me my first drum kit when I was 7 years old, and I mow lawns. And he sort of met me halfway, and I bought my first Yamaha DX7 synthesizer when I was young, and I started to get into programming and that sort of thing. So he's always been a huge support. So it wasn't very bizarre that I wanted to be an artist. However, when I make the decision, at least to kind of look at colleges, that was like well, you have to get a real degree. And that's another one of the reasons that the whole Belmont thing seemed so cool, was because it ticked the box of like, okay, this appeases my parents of getting a legitimate education, and at the same time, I can still, play guitar and get in the studio.
That's fantastic. I love a family that supports like that. That's
Gosh, me too.
brilliant.
Me too.
Brilliant.
I'm really fortunate for sure.
Did you, I mean, look, you have this incredible instrument called your voice too. I know you play other instruments.
Yeah.
Did you take vocal lessons of any sort during that early period at all or not?
I I didn't. The only like proper vocal training I've ever received was when I was part of a Broadway show or a West End show. And in that aspect, I had a chance to work with Liz Kaplan, who is probably one of the best vocal instructors on the planet. Definitely domestically, but I will put her up there with anybody around the world. She's worked with ridiculous talent, from Taylor Swift to Bono to, I mean, you name it. There's a chance that Liz has worked with them, and I wasn't a real big believer in vocal coaching, or at least vocal study, because I thought that the Beatles could teach me everything. I thought that Lennon and McCartney and Roland Orzabal, Tears for Fears could teach me how to sing, and they did. And I kind of, in a way, arrogantly, naively, and sort of pompously prided myself that I could sing really, really well, and never took a vocal, you know, class. However, I'll tell you, when I was part of American Idiot, which was Green Day's show on Broadway, and Liz Kaplan was our kind of vocal, mm, not vocal director, because that wasn't the hat that she wore, but she was like our vocal maintenance contributor. So she helped cast members who were suffering vocally, from fatigue to repair to post surgery kind of stuff with their voice. And it was like, boy, I was so wrong in when you find that one vocal teacher who can totally support what you already do naturally. It's transformative. And I'm kicking myself that, it took me 29, 33 years to ever experience someone, definitely of that caliber. They're no joke. But even as a young person, I'm a big believer, especially because I teach performance and I teach young people how to communicate on stage. I would have given my right arm if I would have known what I know now.
Right. Now but that is a specialized space, and there are only a few great ones, Liz being
Yeah,
one, and like Seth Riggs, and there's a couple that are
totally, totally,
just the
absolutely.
masters at it,
Yeah.
masters, masters, masters. So you graduated from Belmont, I assume. The EMI deal was here or in New York?
Yeah, it was here in Nashville. I I didn't graduate, actually. I got
Neither
my
did
deal.
I.
I I got my deal right at the beginning of my junior year, so right starting my 3rd year of college. And at that time, I was touring. I was supporting a band, who we shared the same management company. So essentially, they put me in front of this band, and this band toured excessively. And I'm talking like 300 dates out of the year. So I was on the road all the time. And this was pre-internet. And I mean, seriously, although I had a website that was really archaic and quite busted, there was no interactive anything, and there was no teaching. If you weren't at the university, you weren't in university in any aspect. So I tried to do the dance of summer school and that sort of thing for several semesters, and there just came a time where I was like, music is king right now in my life, and I can always go back to school if I have to, but I can't do this half-assed. And that's when I chose to just, kind of put school on hold for an indefinite period of time.
And I mean, did you stay down here during that EMI
I
deal in
I
Nashville, or did you
did.
go to New York at some point? Where?
No, I stayed here the whole time. I did 2 records with EMI. We had some pretty significant radio success. I think we had 6 number 1 Billboard radio songs. But in that time period, um, Nashville is still kind of an anomaly because it's such a songwriting driven community. You can have a career as a songwriter, but I wanted to be around something that was different, something that was really artist driven as opposed to song driven. And I couldn't find that here. And this was 95, 96, 97. So it was still very country-esque here, and it was a very safe environment, and somebody in their 20s, I don't want safety, I want excitement, I want danger, I want, something that is really heavy-hitting, and so I wanted to pursue more of a rock-driven sonic soundscape around me, and that's when I moved to New York, and this was early 97, I think February of 1997, and wound up, like, 3.5 weeks later, getting the first national tour of a Broadway show called Rent, and that sort of set me on this sort of rock, pop-esque theater journey for 18 years, although I did continue to write songs and put out records, and I even had a deal with Sony, with Epic, for about a 2.5 period of time before MP3s really took their toll on the majors,
Right. And I think I met you
It's exactly
maybe
when you and I met. Yep.
about that time, right?
Uh-huh. I
Right.
think it
Head
was
on because of Andy
98.
Tavel. Yeah.
Exactly. I think it was 98. Yeah.
Yeah. So you come to New York. I mean, you get into a touring company of Rent.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it was Jonathan Larson who wrote that. Is that his
Yeah,
name
that's
was?
exactly right.
And
Yeah,
is he still alive then, or did he already
no,
die?
he died right before it went to Broadway. I still think that,
Oh, wow.
I think he died your fans are gonna correct me if I'm wrong. I think he passed away before it even moved or even had the idea to move. I mean, I guess the idea was always to go to Broadway with it, but I still think that it was in its New York Theater Workshop days that Jonathan died, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I never had a chance to meet him, although I met his parents, who actually are New Mexico natives as well, which was kind of a cool
Hmm,
coincidence.
that's kind of funky.
Yeah, but after 9 months on the road with the show, I was like, "Wait a minute, I moved to New York, I lived there for a month, and then have been spending 9 months on the road." And then I called the company management, and I said, "Look, I have had an amazing time, but I have to get back to New York. It is where I set my sights on, and I've got to get back." And I get a voicemail saying that, "We know that you want to leave, the road. Something has just opened on Broadway. Would you come back to Rent and do it in New York?" And it
Hmm.
was just like, oh my gosh, like it was just like the endorsing decision. Like, I decided to go back to New York, and this opportunity kind of supports that decision.
Same role or different?
I swung on the tour, meaning I covered multiple roles, and then I went back to New York and did 2 different lead roles in the show at different times.
So I have a question because
Yeah,
I've spent so much time around music, entertainment, film in LA and New York.
yeah.
Um, in Broadway, I'm less kind of versed on how things work. So how did like you've had some breakthrough shows and moments?
Mm,
Like how does that audition and like casting process really work in theater?
sure.
And what there's just different metrics in film and let's say pop music versus
Mhm.
what they're looking for in Broadway because Broadway kind of have to have a lot of talent. Some of these other things you can kind of slide.
You gotta have the
8 shows a
I was
week.
just gonna say, you gotta have the stamina for an 8-show week. You know, I I have not gotten involved on the TV film side of things. It's not the kind of actor that I am. That's its own skill set that I just have not ever chose to develop. Um, a lot of it is I'm gonna say it's sort of similar to rock and roll, at least in the scope of getting a manager. I'll just put the manager agent component under the same umbrella. And once you get an agent, and it's not the easiest thing to do in New York if you want to pursue theater, but they're the key holders that get you in to the auditions. And fortunately, our mutual friend Andy Tavel, who is an entertainment attorney in New York City, he actually represented 4 of the original Rent members. And that, because of my relationship with Andy, is how I got an audition for Rent in the first place. So, I mean, it always tends to be the situation of it's who you know. And although I had to go through the exact same process as anybody else who auditioned for Rent, I did at least have someone kind of handhold me into the process. And like a manager who gets you into an A&R meeting or gets your A&R person to come see you play out in a club. It's sort of the same kind of thing, but instead of seeing you in a club, you're actually going to see casting directors in, a rehearsal space, and you prepare sides for it. If you're that deep in the process, if it's like an initial audition, you probably come in with some sort of song that emulates the kind of feel for the majority of the music. If it's a pop-esque kind of thing, you'll want to do something that is at least kind of a known melody. You don't want to do something that is so known that there's a chance that they're going to hear the same song from 10 different people that day. That's something you definitely don't want to do. But you don't want to necessarily have to educate the casting director, because they're not here to see if that's a great song. They're here to see if you can communicate. Can you tell a story through a song? Can you feel comfortable in front of a folding table of very specific, talent lookers, um, for their show? And it's one of those things. After doing it for so long, for 18 years, I finally feel like I have the history and the advice that I can sort of impart into the next generation of talent, because those people that are behind that folding table, it's very easy to get nervous and hate auditioning. But if you can sort of flip it on its head of, these people are not there to judge your talent as much as they are there cheering for you in the back of their mind, going, God, I hope you are the answer to the problem that I'm trying to solve by filling this casting position. Do you know what I'm saying? That is such a mental flip, and it can change the way you approach an audition. And it took way too long for me to sort of apply that in my own career, but at least I can try to cut down the time frame on young people of tomorrow.
Wisdom. It's such an amazing thing at this age.
Yeah,
So
something.
you're in Renton, New York. How many
Yeah,
years did you do that?
I did it for about 18 months jointly with the tour, and then went to New York for 10 months, and then I got a film of Jesus Christ Superstar, which we shot in London at Pinewood Studios, which is where they did a lot of the early 007 films.
Very
And
famous.
yeah, really historical venue. And then they were going to do the first Andrew Lloyd Webber revival of Superstar on Broadway in 2001. And he cast me as Judas. And that is really where my career kind of hit the accelerator, was because of that one moment. The show itself kind of got killed in reviews, and our Jesus got got crucified many times over. But myself and the actor who played Mary, really ridiculous singer and actor, we tended to be the golden people that our press chose to show, and it just kind of was a domino effect. We actually used that show because, when you're in an 8-show week, as much as I wanted to do rock and roll, I'm spending that only, solo night alone, not speaking and not doing anything. I mean, if you know, you can talk to anybody who has tried to sing the Judas role in an 8-show week, and outside of singing on stage, you have no life. You can't have a life because it's such a demanding vocal role. But um, we used that as a showcase to record companies because I couldn't play out, and so that eventually led me to my second, major label record deal. And then I spent about 2.5 years riding with people all over the place, from Stockholm to LA to London, essentially everywhere except New York, where I was living. Funny enough, um, but yeah, that's it was an amazing ride,
Yeah.
and
And
yeah,
that's directly with Lloyd Webber. I mean, you auditioned
yeah,
for him. He was
I
integral to
did.
your being cast and all that.
Yeah, I mean, he was him, and I mean, obviously, there's a team of that was involved in the film that was not necessarily involved in the stage production, but Kevin Wallace was the guy who essentially was his right-hand man in regards to all of his theatrical productions on stage. And Kevin was a huge support for me. And but Weber makes the calls, definitely when it comes down to the finish line.
I can only imagine. He seems like
At
a
least at that time. I mean, this was such an amazing project. Not only was it his first revival, but it was so so weighty that he flew his entire company of Really Useful Group from London over to New York to see it. And I think that was 190 people. This was an opening night was
Wow.
epic. I mean, there was live women hanging from these long, long ropes like they were angels. They had wings on them, and so these were like live live girls as angels hanging from the Hammerstein Ballroom, and there was oysters and caviar and sushi, and you would enter if you were part of the company as an actor on this huge catwalk. Like it was very rock and roll and way over the top. I think they spent like $750,000 on the party alone.
Wow.
It
So
was
did
it
the
was it,
revival, I mean, is that the
yeah.
TV? Was it a TV or a film? Which came first? Was
Yes. Well, if you want to go, but like back in history, the Brown album, the Jesus Christ Superstar album, was just a rock record. It was a concept album that was never put on stage, and then they did a stage production in London, and then they did it. I think it was 1974 or six when they first did a New York production of it. And so when I say I did the revival of it, I did the revival of the Broadway show, and that was in 2001.
okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Got it. Got it. And how long did that run?
Gosh, it was short. 9 months, I think.
All that
Mhm.
work, huh? See,
Lot of lot of
this
do
is the
re
real
mi.
beauty. This is the beauty of Broadway, man. It is brutal,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I mean, I know horror stories of they almost get their reviews and they shut down the next day. It definitely was like that in the old days. Now you have a little bit more, financial support to get you through some bad reviews, but you can only kind of do that for so long,
And so,
and you just die.
this was a very high profile thing, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this helped you. Did it help your artist career? I mean, on doing your own records, was your profile large enough from it, or was it just too short a run? Or
I think it was too short, and because even though I personally got really great reviews, usually when a show gets killed like that, it's very hard for even the lead actor or actress to come out smelling really great. You're associated with something that's sinking, and so although, it helped me land a record deal, it didn't do what, for example, I'm trying to think of another show and another actor. Broadway examples aren't exactly great with me of who can sort of transcend that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that the reviews definitely didn't help my trajectory. And it also, though, for somebody who wanted to do a rock record, the idea of musical theater in itself back then, this was in, 2000, was still very safe. It kind of sort of is to a certain extent still, but, it's a very fine line of being a legitimate artist in a rock and roll setting and being an actor. It's this strange dichotomy that I think is quite historical of like every movie star wants to be a rock star and every rock star wants to be a movie star. It's like this strange, it's why Johnny Depp is in Hollywood Vampires and why you see all these sort of cameos of rock stars from Steven Tyler to, I don't know.
I
There's a
understand
lot
that.
more crossover now, but those crossover moments that happen usually are in the pop music genre. It's not rock and roll, and I wanted to do something that was more Brit pop, Brit rock, very Oasis sounding, very Beatles sounding, very kind of aggressive and kind of irreverent to a certain extent. Um, and that, a lot of that probably was because I came from a really conservative home and I just wanted to say fuck you to everything and I wanted to be out of the box and thought of as intelligent and against the machine in some aspect. But I can't, you can't deny your past, where you came from, as much as you want to kick it away. It's that albatross that continues to either hold you down or you start to embrace where you came from and to see what opportunities that would bring. And I did that probably too late to be a successful, you know, recording artist in that aspect.
Right. The
Probably.
typecasting thing is is real, folks. It's a real struggle.
It
So
is, I mean,
it
I wanted to
is.
be Liam Gallagher so fucking bad, but I wasn't. I didn't grow up, I didn't grow up poor. I
You
didn't
weren't
grow up
trashing things
right. Not
or
my personality.
people.
Right, exactly, or your family members or whatever.
Right,
It
as
just
your own
wasn't.
kin.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't my personality. Although that lifestyle, whether it was like Robbie Williams or, it wasn't me as much as I wanted it to be me. It just wasn't. And that was a hard thing for me to swallow. When I got signed to Epic, they wanted me to be the next George Michael, and I wanted to be the next, Robbie Williams, that guy who was screw the system and kind of do it your own way. But that wasn't it. And that probably cost me being held on to do a really successful record.
Right,
Probably so.
that makes sense. So, how do you return to London?
Mm,
And not only return to London, but return in a very big way with We
yeah.
Will Rock You and
Yeah.
Queen. How did that? Tell us that. That's going to be a great story, and it had to be very competitive. And
It's a very funny story. It was competitive. It was competitive to the sense of the band had been trying to do a musical with Robert De Niro financing the thing, or I should say jointly with Tribeca Films and the Queen Machine. They wanted to do a musical, and they didn't exactly know what that meant. They didn't know if they wanted to do something that was based around Freddie's life or the story of the band. They didn't know, and they had been through so many incarnations, and I'm talking for like 6 or 7 years. Ironically, I was writing in London with a few people for my record with Sony, and I get a call from my theatrical agent saying, "Hey, they're taking auditions, they're taking video auditions for this Queen musical that's gonna happen in London. Would you be interested in videoing yourself and self-submitting?" And I said, "Well, I'm here right now, in London." And they're like, "Wait a minute, let me let them know that." And so this was right on Christmas break, um, in 2002. Maybe it was late 2001, 2002. It's a little bit hazy on the time frame, but nonetheless, it was right during Christmas. I get a call to go to a rehearsal space and audition for the music director, a guy named Mike Dixon. And this girl comes in to sing with me, who wound up being my co-star in the show. And from what I understand, they had been auditioning this show domestically in England as a whole, and I'm talking Scotland, Ireland, the whole UK entirely, to find somebody who could act and sing, not like Freddie, but could sing Freddie stuff. And they were like, "We got to go to America, I guess. We can't seem to find that thing that we're looking for." And that's why they opened it up to anybody in America. And it was, again, right place, right time. I sing for Mike and I sing with this girl. And then the next day after Christmas, which is Boxing Day, I get called back. That's when my callback was. And I walk into this rehearsal space with the guitar because I was on my way to Heathrow to fly back to New York. And there's Brian and there's Roger looking like he had a great night. Basically the creative team for We Will Rock You. I think Arlene Phillips, who was the choreographer for the show, was there. And I sang, and it was it was very surreal because the girl that I sang with the day before, or excuse me, the 2 days before, the day before Christmas, um, it was a really unique sonic blend vocally, and it just worked really, really well, and they heard it, and it was almost a done deal there, although I didn't get the call for, I think, another 2 weeks, where an actual, um, contract was sort of sent to my agent saying, "We want Tony Vincent to be the Galileo for the first company of We Will Rock You."
I mean, were you? I mean, walking into a room like that, clearly. I mean, were you stunned to see Brian and Roger sitting there? I mean, it was
I'm gonna say
unexpected, I assume.
well, I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna be people are gonna roll their eyes. Even though I'm
Go
such an
ahead,
Anglo
Liam Gallagher.
No, it's not irreverent, it's just it's naive in the sense of even though I'm like a huge Anglophile, I was never a Queen fan. So I didn't know
Right.
just how fucking huge this band was. I was into Radiohead and I was into Manson and alternative bands, and Queen it came a little before me in the sense of their radio success. And at that time, I was listening to pretty heavy metal. So Queen was not exactly on my radar. And so when I walk in and see, I obviously understand who Brian was. I knew who he was as a guitar player, being a guitar player, but I didn't exactly understand the weight of it until I joined the company. And then I was asked to perform with Queen on several occasions publicly, including Queen Elizabeth's 50th anniversary on the throne from Buckingham Palace.
And people have to
That
understand the context of this too. I want to get to that because that's like a mind blowing
that was
event.
the longest, shortest 7 minutes of my life.
And I do want to talk about that. But I think for listeners to put it in context, there was no Queen movie. There was no Adam Lambert at this time.
Right.
So you really wouldn't know the scope of this band. I mean, until you got to the UK. And then
Right.
this thing
Because,
opening on the West End. I mean, I saw you in this, fortunately. You were nice enough to invite me. I saw you perform in this. You were
yeah.
remarkable.
Thanks.
And the intensity and the energy around this band there, it's just stunning.
It was stunning. The thing that I learned as I spent a lot of time with Brian and just sort of the Queen hierarchy, for lack of a better word, I realized that in America they were big, but globally they were bigger than the Queen herself. They were a movement that didn't ever die. And in America they had radio success, but they weren't like royalty where they were everywhere else on the planet. So I was really caught by surprise, which is probably a great thing because I didn't go in thinking that, oh my gosh, I'm singing in front of Tom York this morning. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't that. It was like, oh, I'm going to another audition for a musical that, oh shit, could actually bring me to London. That was exciting to me. It was the fact that I was actually maybe going to get to live in London, which was my dream from a young boy. That was my excitement. It wasn't that I was going to be in a musical on the West End because it was rock and roll to me. It wasn't theater. So the fact that it was honest music, it was rock and roll and pop music that I would be singing, that was exciting. But it was, to me, it was London. It was it for me.
Right. How long did that run last?
My time with it, or how long did that show
Yeah,
last on
well,
the
the
West
show
End?
lasted, right? How long were you involved?
I was involved in the first year and a half of that show before going, you know what, I got to go home and make a record. I got to do my own music again. But that show wound up lasting 15 years on the West End.
Right.
I think it was the fourth longest running West End show in the West End history.
That was a big deal.
I think
Big
it was a
deal.
big deal. Big deal.
Big deal. So, and part of this big deal, this Queen Elizabeth's Golden Jubilee performance that you did.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Thing's just mind blowing to me. I mean, what was there? 500,000 people, 1,000,000 people in Hyde Park. What was going on there?
There was 1 million people. There was 12,000 people that lottery ticketed to get into the garden at Buckingham Palace. So there's 12,000 people in front of the stage, including the royal family. And then there was 1 million people in and around London at Hyde Park. They had these huge, I don't know what you want to call them, movie screens, video screens, or whatever. They had it at St. James Park. They had it at Hyde Park. And so 1 million people were watching it in real time. But globally, it was also televised. And they say that between 200 and 250 million people were watching this in real time.
Incredible.
And I'm the most famous unknown person that nobody knows to the day. But I mean, it was unbelievable because I'm sharing the stage with Annie Lennox and Eric Clapton and Ozzy Osbourne, and Phil Collins is playing a second set of drums for me and Queen. So Roger's there, Phil Collins is there, but I'll tell you, the fact that I can make this last statement is mind-blowing to me. It was a huge honor to be asked to perform with Queen. But when I was 4 or 5 years old and I heard Hard Day's Night and it was McCartney my whole youth, and that's why I'm here talking to you today, I get to sing Hey Jude with Paul McCartney at the end of that night. And that to me was like, if it all ends now, it's okay. It's okay.
That's pretty brilliant.
Pretty special.
Pretty
Pretty
brilliant.
special.
And the two Queen songs, what did you do? We Will Rock You and Bohemian Rhapsody. Which two did you do?
Yeah.
Those are two?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I didn't do We Will Rock You, I think was sung by a guy named Will. I'm spacing on his last name. He was a big TV pop winner. I think it wasn't Britain's Got Talent was not part of that. I think it was whatever Britain Idol? Pop
Hmm.
Idol? I think it was called Pop Idol.
Let's talk about you. So let's talk about you.
Will Young sang We Will Rock You, and then I sang Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's not much of a task.
I mean,
So Paul
what do you
McCartney's
do?
the
What do you do?
highlight. You meet Paul
Well, it
McCartney.
was for
Did you
me.
meet?
Well, I did because the guy who wrote the script to We Will Rock You was good friends with Paul and Linda, a writer named Ben Elton. So he was a writer for a real famous comedy sketch thing called The Black Adder, and then he became a novelist and a writer, and wound up writing the actual text for We Will Rock You. And because of his association with Paul, he obviously was at the event, at the concert, and basically ushered me over to meet Paul. Yeah.
Crazy. And
Crazy.
so meeting the Queen was maybe second to that, or did that even
Well,
occur, or did they keep them
it
all
did.
away?
No, she came and met all of the artists who performed that night in a long line. So she, we couldn't touch her. She just came and said thank you to everybody, made a point to just, pay, I guess, joint respects, allowed us to pay our respects to her, and thank her for inviting us. And that was that. And then it was over, and it was back to another 8-show week the
Right.
following day. That was our day.
Yeah, these are seminal things, though, in your life. I mean, something like that.
Oh, sure.
I mean, opening in the West End. I mean, dream for a boy from New Mexico to end up in
Yeah.
London doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's mind blowing. And then, you end up an American Idiot too, which is kind of a highlight.
I'll tell that was one of the most creatively fulfilling experiences. Beyond the fact that it was the way that Billy Joe allowed that show to be structured, because he was incredibly hands-on in the whole process, was that it was unapologetically rock and roll. Our musicians were total aggressive players and very, very talented. And when we made a cast album, Green Day was our band, and we spent time. And this is the one of the big issues that I have being a producer in the record making world, is that most of Broadway's, I think they sell themselves short because they don't apply a proper budget for a cast recording. They make their cast do it in and around their performance schedule. They don't take time to actually record great sounds and the best vocals, and they don't spend money on getting the best mix engineer for the thing. And I'll tell you, I stand behind that. The American Idiot cast recording is possibly one of the best Broadway records ever recorded. Go listen to it. And it frankly has nothing to do with my involvement with it. It's just that Chris Dugan, the engineer of that record, and Billy Joe Armstrong made sure that thing sounded fucking amazing, and it does. It is such a beautiful record, and the fact that they had already toured on the American Idiot record for themselves for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years alone, those songs were so in their bodies that they could play that stuff in their sleep. So when they approached doing a record again of material that they had played for night after night after night for years, their playing on it was better than the actual American Idiot record. Even though Butch Vig is a ridiculously talented guy who produced the American Idiot project, I don't know, man. There's something that's really special about that Broadway recording. It's really unique, really unique.
And I think kind of a mutual friend, Tom Kidd. Did Tom do something like the
Yes,
arrangements or something
he
for that
did, and
particular?
holy shit, so talented. Tom is so
Crazy, right?
good.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh. When you think those are just great pop songs, and then you hear the vocal arranging of that stuff is just, it's spectacularly dark and haunting, and broken. It's just so beautiful. Those are the reasons that I do rock and roll still. It's those moments that just it goes beyond this is ear candy or this just sounds good. It's stuff that hits you in a place that you can't really articulate. That's what to me music is about. It moves me to this day. I go and listen to that record or these iconic projects that mean so much to me. Now it's why I continue to do music. It's why I love rock and roll. It it moves me. I
It's
can't help it.
I love that. Love the passion, my friend. So we're kind of getting down on time, so I'm just going to kind of loop around here. You have two beautiful children. You shared some
I do.
photos this week, which I loved. And let's just, as we kind of exit here,
Yeah.
why don't you give some information regarding PCG Theatrical and how they can find you and kind of what it offers up.
Sure. It's very easy to find us. PCGtheatrical.com. And that's P as in Peter, C as in cat, G as in go, theatrical.com. It is a customized one-on-one artist development program that I and another gentleman run for young people who want to make musical theater their career. And so it's unlike anything out there. It's not a conservatory curriculum. This is based around the individual and their needs. Prior to COVID, everything took place in Nashville, and they would come in. When I say they, the young person, the client, and their parents would come in to Nashville. They would spend about 2.5 days here. It would be a full court press to spend as much amount of time that we could with that young person, whether it was vocal instruction or acting coaches or choreography and intensive dance, performance coaching, communication, how to actually deliver something that is compelling and inviting to an audience member into their world. All of that kind of thing is very hands-on, and it's actually successfully moved into an online format. And again, the website at pcgtheatrical.com is the best way to get that information over to you. And you basically just fill out your name, a contact number, email address, and we will reach out to you. It's as easy as that.
Fantastic.
And yeah, it's
Dude,
great.
That's the real deal. Hearing it from you, so I mean, and they're going to get that's amazing access for anyone to have access to your experiences and and to your talent. By the way, so
well, it's a real. I mean, it's time that and maybe it's because I've had children now. But I tell you, I taught with a nonprofit for a couple of years when I wasn't on stage, and it's so gratifying to see the penny drop in a young person's life where they finally go, oh, that's it. I get that. That's what I need to work on. That there's something that's just really self-fulfilling and it's empowering, and it's this cycle that kind of feeds itself, and it's something that I've grown to have a real love for, because it's no longer about me. It's about my kids, and it's about, are we going to bring real talent to a Broadway stage? If I can help make that happen, sign me up.
Right on. So people take advantage of this. It's an amazing opportunity. Listen, I can go on for hours here. To be honest, I have a billion more things to ask, but we're going to wrap because of time. And I'm extremely, extremely grateful for you spending some time with me today and talking about this. So.
Hey, it's truly a pleasure. I appreciate your friendship, and anytime I can encourage people is it means a great deal to me.
Indeed. I love that. All right, folks. Tony Vincent. Thanks, Tony.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the show this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you even learned a little bit. We post new shows on a weekly basis. I hope you subscribe at Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcasts.